The city above was alive with noise and movement, but far beneath its shining towers, silence rested in forgotten places. Aaron had always been curious about these quiet corners. While others were busy with their work, he often wandered into the old ruins, searching for something different, something that reminded him of the stories his grandfather once told him about Earth before the war. One cool evening, as the lights of the city faded into the distance, Aaron found himself walking down a cracked stairwell. Dust floated in the air, and the smell of rust and damp stone filled his lungs. At the bottom, he reached a broken gate. Beyond it stretched a dark tunnel, its ceiling lined with half-broken lights that no longer worked. It was the abandoned subway. He had heard of it many times, but this was the first time he had dared to enter. People said the tunnels were haunted by memories of war, that strange shadows lingered there. But to Aaron, it wasn't frightening, it was peaceful, untouched by the rush of the world above. He took out a small lantern from his bag and lit it. The soft glow painted the walls with light, revealing faded posters, cracked tiles, and iron tracks covered in dust. Aaron walked slowly, his footsteps echoing through the long, empty tunnel. He felt as though the walls were watching him, whispering stories of the people who once traveled here. How many lives passed through this place, he wondered. The thought made him smile, even if it carried a little sadness. As he moved deeper, a strange sound reached his ears. It was faint, like metal brushing against stone. He stopped, holding his breath, thinking maybe it was only a rat or a piece of loose pipe. But then he heard it again, steady, deliberate, almost like someone moving. Aaron's heart beat faster. He lifted his lantern higher and followed the sound. Around a bend, he saw a soft glow, blue and faint, unlike his yellow lantern light. He hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution, but curiosity won. Carefully, he stepped closer. That was when he saw her. She stood near the old tracks, tall and graceful, her form outlined by the strange glow. Her skin had a faint shimmer, almost like polished stone, and her large eyes reflected the dim light around them. She was clearly not human. Aaron had seen aliens before in the city, but never here, never alone in such a forgotten place. She noticed him at once. Her glowing eyes fixed on his lantern, then on his face. For a moment, silence filled the tunnel. Neither moved, as if the air itself had frozen. Aaron finally spoke, his voice careful but calm. "I didn't think anyone else came here." The alien girl tilted her head slightly. Her voice, when she answered, was soft but carried strength. "Few do. This place is forgotten." Her words echoed gently through the tunnel. Aaron lowered his lantern a little, showing he meant no harm. He studied her carefully. She looked young, though older than him in a way he couldn't explain. Her expression wasn't hostile, only guarded, like someone who didn't expect company. "I'm Aaron," he said simply. For a long moment she was silent, then replied, "Nira." The name lingered in the air like music. Aaron felt an unexpected warmth rise in him. He hadn't planned to meet anyone here, much less an alien girl who seemed to belong to the shadows of this place. Yet something about her presence made the abandoned subway feel less empty. "What brings you here?" he asked gently. Nero looked at the broken tracks, her eyes thoughtful. "Memories," she said at last. "This place holds pieces of the past. I come to listen." Aaron nodded. He understood, in a way. He had come here searching for something he couldn't name, and she had too. Their reasons were different, but their longing was the same. For a while, they stood without speaking. The only sounds were the distant dripping of water and the faint hum from the crystals she carried at her side. Then Nira's gaze softened, as if she had decided he was not a threat. "You may walk here," she said quietly. "But do not break the silence. The silence remembers." Aaron smiled slightly. "I'll be careful." He knew then that this meeting was not the end of his journey into the subway. It was the beginning. As he left that night, the city lights above looked different, brighter somehow. His mind kept returning to Nira's eyes, glowing softly in the dark. The abandoned subway no longer felt empty to him. It felt alive with secrets, with memories, and with the promise of something new. The next day, Aaron could not stop thinking about the strange encounter in the abandoned subway. The image of Nira, with her glowing eyes and calm but guarded voice, stayed in his mind like a memory he didn't want to lose. He tried to go about his usual routine in the city, helping with repairs, running errands, listening to the chatter of the crowded streets, but everything felt ordinary compared to the quiet mystery of the tunnels below. When evening came again, his curiosity pulled him back. He told himself it was only to look around, to see more of the place, but deep down he hoped Nira would be there. Carrying his lantern, he descended the cracked stairwell once more, his footsteps echoing just like before. The subway greeted him with its stillness. Dust floated in the lantern's glow, and broken rails stretched into darkness. For a while, he heard nothing but the drip of water. He wondered if maybe Nira wouldn't appear this time. But then, as he rounded the same bend as before, a soft blue light shone ahead. She was there. Nira stood near the old tracks again, her presence steady and quiet, as though she had been waiting. Her eyes lifted to meet his lantern's glow, and though she said nothing at first, her expression no longer carried the same sharp caution. "You returned," she said softly. Aaron gave a small smile. "I wanted to see if the subway would let me walk again." Her lips curved just slightly, not quite a smile but not distant either. "The silence remembers," she repeated, almost like a reminder, but her tone was gentler this time. They stood facing each other in the dim tunnel. Aaron felt the weight of her gaze. It was different from the way humans looked at him. Her eyes seemed to look past the surface, as if searching deeper, testing if he truly belonged there. "I didn't mean to disturb you yesterday," Aaron said after a pause. "I thought I was alone." Nira tilted her head. "Few dare to come here. Most fear what they cannot see." "Do you fear it?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "Fear is not what keeps me here." Her words hung in the air, and though she did not explain, Aaron didn't press further. He could sense her heart carried something heavy, something she wasn't ready to share. Instead, he changed the subject. "This place, it feels alive, even though it's abandoned," he said. "When I walk here, I imagine voices, trains rushing past, people laughing and talking. It's almost like the walls remember them." Nira's gaze softened, and for the first time, she stepped a little closer. "You hear them too," she whispered, as though surprised. "Not many humans would notice." Aaron felt a spark of connection, faint but real. "Maybe it's because I like listening. The city above is so loud. Down here, every sound has meaning." A silence followed, but it was no longer heavy. It felt shared, like they were standing together in a place that accepted them both. After a while, Nira spoke again. "Why do you come here, Aaron? What do you seek?" He thought carefully before answering. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe. I come because I feel something missing. The city is full, but it feels empty inside me. Here, I feel closer to something I can't explain. Nira studied him, her glowing eyes unreadable. Finally, she nodded. Perhaps that is why the silence allowed you to find me. Aaron blinked in surprise. Allowed me? Yes, she said firmly, though her tone remained calm. Not everyone finds this place. Not everyone is meant to. Her words made him wonder if their meeting was more than chance. He didn't know what she truly meant, but he sensed that the subway carried meaning for her that reached beyond his understanding. The minutes stretched, and their voices faded into another round of silence. But it was no longer awkward. It was the kind of silence that held peace, as if both were learning to trust it together. Before Aaron left, he glanced back at her. She hadn't moved, still standing like a sentinel of the past. Yet her eyes followed him, and this time, she didn't look like she wanted him to stay away. When Aaron climbed back into the city night, he realized something new. It wasn't just the subway that had drawn him back. It was Nira herself. Something in her presence stirred a quiet longing in him, the kind that whispered of stories not yet told. And deep inside, he knew he would return again. The third evening came, and Aaron felt restless until the sun dipped behind the towers. The city's glowing lights no longer excited him, instead, they only reminded him of the quiet waiting beneath the streets. Carrying his lantern again, he made his way down the broken stairwell and into the abandoned subway. He half expected to walk into empty silence, but when he turned the familiar bend, Nira was there. She stood near the tracks, the soft blue glow of her crystal lighting her figure. This time, when she looked up, her expression was calmer, almost as if she had been expecting him. "You came again," she said, her voice softer than before. Aaron smiled. "I couldn't stay away." Nira studied him for a moment, then nodded as if accepting his presence fully now. She gestured to the ground beside her. "Sit. The silence allows you." Aaron sat down near the broken rail, placing his lantern on the ground. The two lights, the yellow flame of his lantern and the cool blue glow of her crystal, mixed together, casting strange patterns on the cracked walls. For a long while, they just sat in the shared quiet. Then Aaron decided to speak. "Do you ever miss your home?" he asked carefully. Nira's eyes lingered on the tunnel before she answered. "Yes. My people live far beyond this world. The stars carry our voices, but here," she touched the wall gently. "Here, the silence remembers better than the stars." Aaron thought about her words. He didn't know her home, but he knew the feeling of longing. "I miss things too," he admitted. "I was young when the war ended. My grandfather used to tell me stories about Earth before it changed. He spoke of oceans so wide you couldn't see the end, of mountains covered in snow, of great forests full of life. I've never seen any of it. Only ruins and rebuilt towers." Nira turned her glowing eyes toward him. "Tell me more," she said simply. So Aaron did. He described the sound of waves crashing against the shore, even though he had only heard recordings. He spoke of birds singing in the morning, of warm gatherings around firelight, of festivals where people danced under open skies. His voice grew more alive as he shared, and he noticed that Nira listened intently, as if she could see the places through his words. When he finished, she was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Your people carry memory in your hearts. That is a strength." Aaron tilted his head. "Don't your people remember too?" Nira lowered her gaze. "We do, but not like this. We remember through crystals and recordings. We keep the past in objects. But you, you carry it in stories, in voices. It lives inside you. Her words surprised him. He had never thought of memory as strength, but the way she said it made him feel proud, almost taller. What about you? Aaron asked gently. What do you remember? Nira hesitated, her hands resting on her knees. My brother, she said at last. He was here, long ago, before he was lost to the war. This tunnel was the last place I felt his presence. That is why I return. Aaron felt a pang in his chest. He didn't know what to say, so he didn't offer empty words. Instead, he nodded slowly and let the silence wrap around them. Somehow, he felt that his quiet presence spoke more than promises could. Nero lifted her eyes again, and for the first time, her guarded expression softened fully. You listen, she said quietly. Most do not. Aaron smiled faintly. Maybe that's why the silence allows me to stay. A small laugh escaped her lips, so quiet it almost blended with the dripping water. But Aaron caught it, and the sound made something warm bloom inside him. They stayed like that for a long while, sharing small stories. Nira told him of the stars she had traveled through with her people, of vast nebulae glowing like rivers in the dark, of moons covered in silver forests. Aaron listened with wide eyes, and though he couldn't imagine it all, he felt her words the same way she had felt his stories of Earth. By the time Aaron rose to leave, the subway felt different again. The silence was no longer empty, it carried both of their voices now, their stories woven into its forgotten walls. When he reached the stairwell, he turned back one last time. Nira still sat near the tracks, her crystal glowing softly in the dark. This time, though, she raised a hand in a small, graceful gesture, half a wave, half a promise that their meetings would continue. Aaron left with a lighter step, his heart full of a strange new warmth. The abandoned subway was no longer just a relic of the past. It was becoming something alive, a place where two voices from different worlds could meet and share memories that made the silence stronger, not lonelier. The days began to pass differently for Aaron. His routine in the city became lighter, not because the tasks had changed, but because he carried a secret that gave him strength. Every evening, as the towers above lit up with artificial glow, he slipped quietly into the forgotten stairwell, lantern in hand, and returned to the abandoned subway where Nero waited. Each meeting added something new to their bond. At first, it was words, small exchanges, gentle stories. But soon, they began to bring pieces of their worlds to share with each other. One evening, Aaron arrived with a small notebook in his hands. Its cover was worn, and its pages were filled with sketches. He sat beside Nira on the cracked floor and opened it. Inside were drawings of things he had never truly seen but imagined from his grandfather's stories: mountains capped with snow, wide oceans, forests stretching endlessly. These are Earth's memories through my eyes, he explained. I don't know if they look exactly like this, but this is how I picture them. Nero leaned closer, her glowing eyes tracing the lines on the page. She touched one of the sketches lightly with her fingertips, careful not to smudge the charcoal. They are beautiful, she whispered. Even if they are only imagined, they feel alive. It is as if your heart painted them. Her words made Aaron's chest warm. He hadn't thought much of his drawings before, but in her voice, they sounded precious. In return, Nira pulled from her satchel a small crystal. Unlike the one she always carried for light, this one pulsed faintly with colors that shifted like a rainbow. She placed it in Aaron's hands. This holds the song of my people, she said softly. Aaron stared in awe as the crystal vibrated gently, releasing a low, melodic hum. It was not music made by instruments, but something deeper, a chorus that seemed to rise from the very heart of the stone. The sound filled the tunnel, soft but rich, as if the walls themselves were singing. It remembers voices, Nira explained. When one of us sings into it, the crystal holds the sound forever. Aaron held it carefully, almost afraid to breathe too loud. It's alive, he murmured. Nira's lips curved faintly, almost a smile. Now you have heard my people's voices. You carry them in your ears. They sat together, listening until the hum faded into the natural silence of the subway. It was in these moments, when their worlds touched through simple offerings, that they felt the distance between them shrink. The nights continued like this. Aaron brought small things from the surface: an old lantern with polished glass, a folded piece of music paper, a pebble shaped like a heart. Nira shared alien trinkets that glowed, whispered, or changed color when touched. Each object was simple, yet it carried meaning, and soon the space around them filled with a growing collection of their shared treasures. One night, as they arranged these items in a small circle near the broken rail, Aaron spoke quietly. It feels like we are building something here. Like the subway isn't abandoned anymore. Nira's gaze rested on the circle of objects. Yes, she said. The silence has new voices now. Yours and mine. Her words filled him with a gentle pride. He had never thought himself special, yet here, with her, he felt like his presence mattered. As time passed, their conversations deepened. Aaron told her about his fears that he often felt small in a world rebuilt from war, unsure of his place. Nira listened carefully, never judging. In return, she admitted her own doubts that her people sometimes looked down on humans, yet she saw something in Aaron that made her question those beliefs. I admire your kind, she said one evening. You are fragile, yet you carry warmth that endures. It is not strength of the body, but of the heart. Aaron met her gaze, his voice steady. And I admire you. You carry wisdom I don't understand, but it makes me want to listen more. Their bond grew in the quiet glow of lantern and crystal. The abandoned subway, once filled only with dust and silence, now held the sound of laughter. Aaron had never imagined that such joy could exist in a forgotten place. When he left each night, climbing back into the bright city, he no longer felt the same emptiness. The world above was busy and restless, but he carried with him the peace of the tunnels and the memory of Nira's glowing eyes. And though neither spoke it aloud, both of them knew something had changed. What began as chance meetings had become something deeper, something fragile yet unbreakable. The subway was no longer just a shelter for memories of the past. It was becoming the place where a new story was being written, one that belonged to both of them. The bond between Aaron and Nira grew stronger with each passing evening. What began as small conversations had become long talks about dreams, fears, and everything in between. The circle of objects they had gathered: his notebook, her glowing crystals, his lantern, her humming stone, rested in the center of the subway floor like a shared treasure. The once abandoned place now carried the warmth of their presence. But one evening, as Aaron descended the broken stairwell with his lantern, he noticed something different in Nira's expression. She wasn't standing tall as usual, but sitting near the tracks, her hands resting on her lap, her crystal light dimmer than before. Aaron walked closer and sat beside her without asking. Are you all right? He asked gently. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Her glowing eyes looked far down the tunnel, as though seeing something that wasn't there. Finally, in a soft voice, she spoke. This place holds more than silence. It holds ghosts. Aaron tilted his head, waiting. He had learned that silence was sometimes part of her speech, that if he rushed her, the words would not come. She took a slow breath. I told you before, my brother came here. He was older than me. Strong, proud, always protecting. During the war, he led many through tunnels like these. But one night, he didn't return. Her voice wavered, though she kept it calm. The glow in her eyes dimmed as if weighed by memories. I kept coming back, she continued. Not because I thought he was alive, but because I felt him here. His last steps, his last breath, they linger in the silence. This subway is my way of staying close to him. Aaron's chest tightened. He had seen sadness before, but the way she spoke carried a quiet strength, like someone who had lived with loss for too long. I'm sorry, he said softly. He wanted to say more, but no words felt enough. Neera shook her head slightly. Do not be sorry. Loss is part of living. But it shapes us, makes us different. Her voice grew quieter. My people believe we must carry our past with discipline. We are not meant to let emotions rule us. But when I come here, when I sit in the silence, I cannot be as my people expect. I feel too much. Aaron looked at her, his lantern casting soft light on her face. Maybe feeling isn't weakness, he said slowly. Maybe it's what keeps the past alive. If you stopped feeling, you'd lose him twice. Neera turned her eyes toward him, studying his face. You speak as if loss is a kind of strength. Aaron nodded. It is. My grandfather lost many during the war, but he said remembering them made him stronger. He told me once, we carry those we lose in the way we live. Silence followed, but it wasn't heavy. Neera seemed to consider his words deeply, as if measuring them against her own beliefs. Finally, she gave a faint nod. Perhaps that is why I do not stop coming here, she admitted. Perhaps it is not only for my brother, but for myself. Aaron wanted to comfort her more, but he sensed she didn't need pity. What she needed was someone who listened, someone who stayed. So he stayed, sitting beside her, letting the subway hum quietly around them. After a while, Neera's voice softened. Do you not fear this place, Aaron? The city above whispers of shadows here. Yet you return again and again. Aaron gave a small smile. I was afraid the first time. But then I met you. Now, I don't think of shadows. I think of stories, of memories, of us. Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment. Something unspoken passed between them, something that made Aaron's heartbeat quicken. At last, she looked back toward the tunnel. You are different from others, she said quietly. You're kind, they rush to forget pain. But you hold it, and still you smile. Aaron chuckled softly. Maybe that's just how humans survive. We're not the strongest, not the fastest. But we don't give up. Even when it hurts. Neera's eyes glowed faintly again, a hint of warmth returning. Perhaps that is why the silence allowed you here, she said. They remained together until the lantern flame burned low. When Aaron finally stood to leave, he looked back once more. Neera was still sitting near the tracks, but her shoulders seemed lighter, as though sharing her past had eased a weight. As he climbed the stairwell back into the city night, Aaron realized their bond had deepened. Neera was no longer just a mystery in the tunnels. She was someone who had trusted him with her pain, and in that trust, something fragile yet powerful had begun to grow. The shadows of the past still lingered in the subway, but now they carried not only loss, but hope. The days following Nira's confession felt different for Aaron. The abandoned subway had grown into a place of trust and quiet joy, but now it carried a new weight. He knew that the bond they had formed was rare, and he wanted to protect it, as if it were a fragile treasure. One evening, he descended the familiar stairwell, his lantern swinging lightly in his hand. The soft hum of the city above seemed distant now, replaced by the echo of his footsteps in the tunnel. When he reached the bend, he saw Nira waiting, her crystal glowing as always, but her posture was tense, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "You seem troubled," Aaron said softly as he approached. Nira looked at him, her eyes reflecting the lantern light. "I have heard things," she admitted. "Rumors in the city above. That someone has seen a human in the ruins." Aaron's stomach tightened. He had known their meetings were private, but the city had grown restless and curious. "Do you fear them?" he asked gently. Nira shook her head. "I fear judgment. Not danger. My people, some would not understand." She paused, her glowing eyes meeting his. "They may not accept that I spend time with a human." Aaron knelt beside her, placing a hand lightly on the cool stone floor. "Nira, what we have, it is real. It is not wrong. Why should anyone else's opinion change that?" She looked down at his hand, then back into his eyes. "It is not so simple. My life has rules. My people have expectations. I do not know if I can balance both." Aaron smiled gently. "Then choose what feels right. Do not let the world decide for you. The subway has always been yours, Nira. Now, it can also be ours." For a long moment, Nira stayed silent. Her hands trembled slightly as she considered his words. She had spent so long following rules, carrying the weight of her people's expectations, that the idea of acting purely from her own heart felt strange, almost frightening. "Humans often speak of courage," Aaron continued. "It is not always about fighting. Sometimes, courage is about being honest. About facing fear and choosing what matters most." She studied him carefully. His eyes were steady, full of warmth and something she could not name but felt deeply. The way he trusted her, even now, made her heart ache with longing she had never felt before. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have spent years listening to the silence, waiting for something I could not name. Perhaps it has been you." Aaron's chest lifted with hope, and a small smile spread across his face. "Then let us stop hiding," he said softly. "Let us face what comes together. No matter what anyone says, no matter what is expected, I want to be here with you." Nira's crystal glowed brighter, as if responding to the promise in his words. She took a slow step forward, then another, until she stood beside him. I will try," she said, her voice steadying. "I will not hide anymore. If this is what I feel, I will honor it." They stood together, shoulder to shoulder, letting the subway embrace their shared courage. The walls, once silent witnesses to past sorrows, now seemed alive with the promise of something new. "You truly mean it?" Nira asked, her glowing eyes studying him. Aaron nodded firmly. "With all my heart. What we have, it is worth everything." A smile finally appeared on Nira's face, faint but full of relief. "Then we face it," she said. They walked slowly along the abandoned tracks, side by side. Each step seemed lighter, the weight of fear and uncertainty falling away. The subway, with its broken walls and forgotten memories, became not just a refuge, but a symbol of courage and choice. That night, as Aaron climbed back into the city above, he looked down at the stairwell with new hope. Nero would not hide. They had chosen each other, despite doubts, despite expectations. And that choice, he realized, was more powerful than any rules, any whispers, any fear. The abandoned subway, once a place of silence and shadows, now carried the sound of determination and trust. Together, they had made their first step toward a life unafraid, toward a bond that neither distance nor judgment could easily break. The abandoned subway had changed. Once a place of silence and shadows, it now carried warmth. Lantern light and the soft glow of crystals painted the walls with comfort, and the echoes of laughter and stories filled the space where only memories had lived before. Aaron and Nira had made it their own, a place where two worlds met in quiet understanding. That evening, Aaron descended the stairwell with a lantern swinging gently in his hand. The city above had settled into the night, but below, the air carried a sense of possibility. He found Nira waiting, as always, her crystal casting soft blue light. But tonight, there was something different in her posture, less hesitation, more resolve. "You are here," she said simply, though her voice held something more, a note of certainty, of shared purpose. "I promised I would return," Aaron replied with a smile. "And I always keep my promises." For a moment, they simply stood there, side by side, letting the subway's silence embrace them. Then Nira spoke, her voice calm but clear. "I have decided. I will not hide any more, not in the shadows, not from the world above, not from myself." Aaron's chest lifted with joy. He had waited to hear these words, knowing the courage it had taken for her to speak them aloud. "Then we face it together," he said. "Whatever comes, we will meet it as one." She nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting the lantern light. "Yes," she whispered. Together, they walked along the tracks, each step lighter than the last. The walls of the subway, once cracked and empty, now seemed to lean closer, as if listening to their hearts. The tunnel no longer felt abandoned. It had become a bridge not just between two places, but between two hearts, between two worlds. As they reached the end of the tunnel, where the stairwell led back to the city above, Nira paused. Her hand brushed lightly against Aaron's, and he felt the warmth of her touch. "It is strange," she said softly. "The city above is so bright, so loud. But it feels smaller now. We have grown here." Aaron smiled. "It is not smaller. It is different. We carry the strength of what we have built together. The city above may rush, but we have time to shape our own path." She looked at him, and for the first time, she allowed a true smile to bloom. It was not the cautious, faint curve of lips from their first meetings. It was full, warm, and unguarded. "Then let us begin," she said. Together, they stepped into the city above. The lights of the streets and towers stretched endlessly, but neither felt overwhelmed. The city that once seemed busy and impersonal now held potential. Every shadow was no longer frightening, every glow carried hope. For Aaron, it was a new world not because it had changed, but because he was no longer alone. For Nira, it was a new life not because she had abandoned her past, but because she had embraced it and chosen a path of her own. Word of their presence in the subway had quietly spread, but it did not matter. They no longer hid. What mattered was the bond they had formed, the trust they had nurtured, and the courage they had found in each other. They walked through the city streets hand in hand, a quiet confidence guiding them. People glanced, curious but unjudging, as if sensing the strength of the connection they carried. Aaron felt proud, not for himself, but for what they had built together, a reminder that love, trust, and courage could thrive even in forgotten places. Eventually, they returned to the edge of the city, where the last light of day mingled with the first glow of night. They paused, looking at the horizon together. Aaron spoke softly, "This is only the beginning. The subway gave us a start, but now we have the whole world." Nira nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting the stars above. "And we will face it together, always." As they turned to continue their journey, the abandoned subway behind them seemed to sigh in contentment. It had witnessed stories of loss, longing, and silence, but now, it had also witnessed hope, courage, and love. The tunnels remained, a hidden place of memories, but they no longer belonged only to the past. They belonged to the future of Aaron and Nira, two hearts from different worlds, walking side by side into a new beginning. The city was vast, the stars above endless, but they had each other. And in that, they found everything they could ever need. The abandoned subway had given them a story. And now, the world above awaited the next chapter.